Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Man's Podcast, presented by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. My name is Vincent, and I have two of my regular, illustrious and industrious co-hosts
I'm Mike.
with me. What are
I'm Michael.
It's the Two Mike crew, and today, this is episode 15. We are talking about the arc Fear of Faith. This is Devin Grayson and Dale Eaglesham. You should probably know who Dale Eaglesham is. I mean, he's currently drawing Shazam with Jeff Johns. He's worked with Jeff Johns previously on JSA and other projects. I think his art here is overall good. I think especially JSA, he really flexed his muscles and he got like insane at like splash pages and lots of characters and stuff like that. And you don't get that here. And also it's just like older style of comics. Certain aspects of the business aren't 100% digital yet. There's different era of coloring and everything. There's still inkers on everything. And so it doesn't look like his Shazam work, but I think it's pretty solid.
It looks
And
like
we'll talk
plastic
more
to
about-
me. It's with this early 90s coloring.
Okay, yeah. We'll probably talk a little bit more about the art as we go through. But Devin Grayson, let's dive into her. Even though we've already seen her before, and I feel like I may have done a version of this already, but she's still relatively early into her comics career. She broke into the business in 1997, and pretty much exactly a year after her first work, she got her first ongoing gig taking over Catwoman. And so that's where we've already read a few issues from her. A month before this arc, she got her second ongoing, basically cementing her as a DC Universe regular. And that book was Titans, which basically Devin Grayson worked in two arenas because obviously there's Batman stuff, and that's what we're talking about today, and I'll get to other things that she contributed to in a second. But Titans follows her a lot of other stuff that she did because her first work ever was a one-shot called Batman Plus, and it was like this weird thing in 1997 where a bunch of characters had plus one-shots, kind of like an annual or something, but the idea was they were team-ups. So Batman Plus with Arsenal, and like Green Lantern Plus is with the Ray, and there are other examples. A bunch of the pluses were also like a way to set up this weird book called Scare Tactics, which is like this horror-themed teenage punk band of superheroes. It's really weird, cult classic book. But Batman Plus Arsenal was Devin Grayson's first work. Then she did an Arsenal miniseries. Then she co-wrote JLA Titans with Phil Jimenez, and then got the Titans book. A bit after this arc, she will do a Black Widow miniseries starring Yelena Belova, and that's following a Black Widow miniseries which introduced Yelena by her No Man's Land contributor Greg Rucka. Her Titans run lasts around 20 issues, Catwoman around the same, and directly following No Man's Land, literally the issue after, or the month after No Man's Land concludes, she will launch Batman Gotham Knights. And it's the same exact, again, it's directly after No Man's Land, so it's the same month that Greg Rucka takes over Detective Comics and Larry Hama takes over Batman. The latter one didn't stick quite as long. And around the same time as we're getting into the very early 2000s, she sneaks in the first Marvel Knights attempt at Ghost Rider, which does put John stick until Garth Ennis does his thing, which then allows Daniel Way to set up his thing, which eventually gets to Jason Aaron and all that shit. And the Gotham Knights run lasts even longer than her others. It's 30. She did 32 issues, involved with more crossovers that followed No Man's Land. Then she moves to Nightwing as the first post Chuck Dixon writer on that title, and she did 40 issues of that. And in 2006, she just stops consistently writing comics for some reason. And she's done some interviews since then, and off the top of my head, having not read any of those very recently, I don't know that it's entirely clear why editorial and wasn't getting gigs. And I'm hoping she found some opportunity elsewhere. When maybe it was prose or TV or wherever the hell she went, or maybe she was just chilling. But over the years, people kind of realized, like, hey, she was kind of a big deal. She was the first woman to write an ongoing Batman title. Obviously, she launched that book, and she was pretty. I mean, her Nightwing run is a little bit controversial, but overall, most of her work was pretty acclaimed. She was well regarded, and so now you're seeing some publishers, they'll bring her in to do an 8-page story or a one shot and stuff like that. But I think it'd be interesting to see, how people would react if Devin Grayson was announced to be the new writer on, I don't know, whatever, Batgirl tomorrow. It would be pretty interesting.
Be pretty cool to me, at least. I'd be interested, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the saga of Devin Grayson. Provide our opinions on her writing.
All right, and I guess I'll begin. We got a 4-part story, Fear of Faith, which begins in Batman Legends of the Dark Knight number 116. We got a nice cover of Scarecrow's face with Huntress looking at it. I don't particularly like any of the covers in this episode. I think they're all pretty weak. But it's kind of going to carry over to the art, where I mentioned in our interlude that I don't think the problem is Dale Eaglesham. I think the problem is the coloring and the inking. All this late 90s comic book coloring makes everything look very plasticky and flat and muted to me. And that's kind of how it looks. It's always looked like this way to me. I kind of the same things I mentioned in kind of the later Clone Saga episodes, where we started seeing more and more digital coloring get into, where they haven't fully figured it out yet, where it just kind of looks very, very flat to me. Where I'm just looking at like these plasticky kind of almost like Crayola crayon looking figures. If that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but you'd have to see for yourself. But we open up with this issue with Batman just tagging a wall, letting us know that he's protecting the place. Is the whole framing device of the words there are like, basically recapping what's happening No Man's Land, which kind of I feel like all these story arcs are gonna do, where it's gonna catch us up, like what the situation is. But then we end with, did Batman create Gotham or did Gotham create Batman? Kind of with that framing device of a question. I thought that part was whatever for me, really, honestly. After that, we get into a bunch of people are in a church burning books, but they're not burning the Bible, as Scarecrow is kind of watching all of them, and he's kind of plotting he's like, wow, these people are kind of afraid. I can probably feed on this. As he's hiding out in the Ark Refugee Center that's been set up by Father Christian, where it's kind of a safe haven for all people in Gotham to go and get food and supplies. And they're currently, a kid named Jonah is kind of fixing up the front of the church, and they say they need to tag themselves to let people know, as they've refused police protection from the Blue Boys, which is the Gotham City Police Department. In the meantime, the other father, which how would you pronounce it? Papalio?
Yeah, something like that.
Papalio
Pepalea.
is bringing more refugees into the center, which these people are from Somalia. So they're Somali refugees, and basically, very much a lot of ethnic groups are also here too, as it shows that Father Christian knows multiple languages. Cut to some thugs robbing a woman in Huntress's territory, where Huntress stops it, and she's asking, why are you kind of running around with these supplies at night while this woman in her building there's two crack addicted prostitutes that she's trying to get supplies to, because still people need to get. She's trying to help people any way they can. And then we'll cut to the False Face Society. Do you guys know who the False Face Society are?
Not much more than is explained here.
Okay, so the False Face Society was just kind of a ragtag group of criminals that were founded by the Joker as a plan of his to trick several members of the criminal underworld. But this iteration of it is founded by Roman Sionis, who becomes Black Mask. And here with his men, he's kind of taken it to a more extreme as he's forcibly made these guys scar themselves to show that they're members of the False Face Society, as they're going into an abandoned hospital in the morgue to look for bullets. And what they're doing is pretty messed up, as they're digging through the bodies, like dead bodies that have been killed by guns, and taking the bullets out, and then they're going to recase the bullets. And one of the False Face Society, Mikey, is like, not about this, and he kind of splinters off as they're stopped by Batman, and Batman kind of takes Mikey and puts him as like a little sleeper agent to figure out what's going on in the Ark refugee facility. And he meets with Huntress to tell him, hey, keep an eye on this guy because we want to see what's going on here. The Blue Boys are talking about what they have to do. Kind of their next steps is Gordon's wanting to help the refugee center, but they're too stubborn to get help, so he kind of feels helpless. Huntress goes and investigates herself and sees Scarecrow there, and she just outright starts attacking Scarecrow, and Father Christian has to pull her off of him, which I thought, and we get the kind of the trope of, no, he's fine, he's going to be rehabilitated here, it's going to be cool, give him a chance. And that's kind of the end of the issue. Of we get a monologue from Scarecrow letting us know that, hey, he's totally not okay. And he's definitely planning stuff. And that's Legends of the Dark Knight number 116. I thought this was all right. I don't think I've had a Devin Grayson story that I didn't enjoy. I always thought she was a pretty solid upper average Batman writer. So if any of my problems are this, is that I just not fully particularly interested in the plot of, oh, let's watch and see until Scarecrow enacts his plan and proves that these people that are watching over him are wrong, because we know that he's up to no good. But other than that, I think there's a few good, really, really solid panels showing off Eaglesham's detail, like the panel of Gordon laying in the jail cell room that he has in the GCPD. There's really, really good like detail on his scruff and his mustache and beard there. Kind of his facial close-ups are really, really good, but I think like the regular character work is like that very plasticky look, which I've talked about already. But open the floor to you guys. What do you think of Legends of the Dark Knight number 116?
I enjoyed it. I think you talked about the covers. I think I agree with you. None of them stand out a ton, but this first issue is by far my favorite cover of the bunch, and is most representative of the arc as a whole. I feel like, so Scarecrow's whole thing here is he sees people burning books to stay warm, and he notices that the one they don't burn is the Bible, and then this whole issue is him like obsessed with biblical imagery and stuff like that, and trying to transplant some of that kind of mythology onto the psychology of this kind of like post-apocalyptic-esque status quo. But there's all this fluff. Like eventually he starts talking about the mistranslations of hell and demons and blah blah, and Gotham is in hell. But like I feel like Grayson never like cleanly actually connects those ideas, the like biblical elements, to this
I would
story.
agree.
It would be interesting if she actually executed that part a little better, but it's still an interesting premise. Just Scarecrow kind of being presumed to be chilling out, even though he's in his stupid costume, but he's manipulating everyone because he doesn't have his gas or anything like that, and he doesn't
Right.
have any. Even though he sometimes often doesn't anyways, he also doesn't have like armed goons or anything like that. So it's really just him trying to be a sneaky asshole.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of Scarecrow feeding off of primal fear and wanting to capitalize on that, like you said, with him not having his go-tos of the fear gas and all that. I just think the long monologues, like you said, are very kind of drawn out and not really capitalized well. Um, but I like the way the Scarecrow's written, though. Like, I think he's written right. It's just I think there's not a lot of meat on the bone to say. But Michael, what did you think of this?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you guys' overall assessment. I did really enjoy reading a multi-issue story where Scarecrow was the main villain. Like, I haven't read a whole lot of Scarecrow stories, and as far as Batman villains who have big stories devoted to them, like most of them are probably the Joker, and there's Bane stories, and obviously all the Batman villains have stories and whatever. But I feel like these days some of the ones like Scarecrow might get underused a bit. So I did enjoy how he was written, except I agree that like his ideas were all over the place. Like not burning the Bible somehow turns into like just make them all afraid and kill each other. But like I don't think it was like I think what we're supposed to think about Scarecrow himself is just, oh, he's crazy. This all makes sense in his head. But he's just rambling and connecting stuff where there's not much of a connection. But the fact that we get all these like pseudo philosophical monologues kind of like makes it seem like there's more there than there is, you know? So I feel like maybe just cut back the monologuing a little bit and might play a little better. But yeah, I'm liking Grayson's writing. I'm mostly liking the art. Pretty fine. Yeah, I thought that was a solid start to the story.
Right. With that, I guess take us into part two.
Okay, yeah. So then part two of this story is in Shadow of the Bat 84, and starts out Scarecrow's monologuing, and he's just collecting some rats, picking them up off the street in his fingers and plopping them in a bag, which I mean seems a little inefficient to me, but I guess there's so many rats in no man's land. And
Yeah, I guess we have to keep a running rat counter at this point because we keep seeing them pop up.
yep.
And they're in the news. There's some rat discussion in politics right now. So this is topical.
Oh,
I guess when the series is all set and done, we'll reveal our favorite rat moment.
It'll be really hard to beat the one where the guy in the beginning when the guy wakes up and is just like crawling in them.
Yeah, Ratcatcher getting like swarmed by his own rats is up there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a way to open an issue with just rats gnawing at food.
yep. So, yep, Scarecrow's out rat catching, collecting his rats, and he comments on, oh, everybody's afraid. Only two factions are pretending to be brave, the vigilantes and the missionaries. And what's interesting, I thought, is that the blue boys, the cops, are absent from his assessment. Like, from his point of view, they're not even pretending to be brave or whatever, which is uh, like if Gordon knew he thought that would discourage him a bit, but it is the Scarecrow, so guess they don't have the greatest image in No Man's Land at the moment. And he makes some metaphor about like they're like children playing with swords, and he like starts whipping a stick around like a sword and saying "on guard" and chuckling to himself. So it's kind of funny to me, like we see like he's doing this dark diabolical plan, but then he's also like impish and mischievous, like many of Batman's villains. So yeah, he puts the rats in the food supply at the refugee the refugee center in the church, and the food's contaminated. This issue, like, it's largely setting up the Scarecrow beginning to work his master plan, and like I kind of thought, all of his whispering in people's ears and telling them what to do. Some of it was a little obvious, like why don't they see through him? But anyway, he's like, "Oh, I have an idea for how we could get more food, but you're not gonna like it." And Father Christian's like, "No, whatever it is, we have to." And the idea to be like, "Oh, go make a deal with the Penguin, who's got a whole bunch of supplies he's somehow getting from outside of the city. He seems to be doing pretty well for himself." Also want to briefly comment that the priest's name, Christian, is a very apt name for a priest character. That was definitely on purpose. Father Christian. So anyway, before we find out that the penguin thing is what the deal is, uh, we briefly see just some Batman and Batgirl patrolling the city a bit, and the cops are fighting some goons, and one guy's just kind of losing control, and Gordon's reminding him to he trying to keep him cool. So anyway, back to the main story. Yeah, basically, Penguin offers him, "I'll give you the food and supplies you want if you let me keep a whole bunch of guns in the fallout shelter below the church." And Father Christian's kind of like, "Oh, that's don't know if I like that." And Penguin's like, "Surprise! I'm gonna do it whether you want to or not. The food's just a free gift. If you don't go along with this, I'll kill you." So yeah, even though he went to him, he still kind of ends up being coerced into this deal, and the idea, and the Scarecrow proceeds to leak to the different gangs that they're keeping weapons in the bottom of the church, and there's gonna be a fight over them there. That's basically his plan. Um, so yeah, then we see more of that guy, the false face guy, Mikey, I think his name is. He's playing around with the children and helping out, showing himself to be a good citizen now, starting to turn himself around. And Huntress is still suspicious of Scarecrow, as he should be. I mean, the fact that he's just wearing his suit this whole time should be a giveaway. Um, and Batman and Catwoman have a fight with some. No. Batman and the new Batgirl have a fight with some of the false faces in a building, which ends up getting burned down. I think the weapons are there, but then Batman's like, "Oh no, this was arson. They couldn't be there." So yeah, we get a little more of the mysterious new Batgirl here, and I think there are some hints in the dialogue that hint at who she ends up being. I'm not gonna spoil it in case we're not spoiling that or whatever.
I mean, we've already spoiled it.
What's I say?
We already spoiled it.
Okay, yeah. I think there's definitely hints at it being Huntress. It is Huntress, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still a little fuzzy on the logistics of it and why she's patrolling No Man's Land in two different identities, but I guess we'll get to that. But the dialogue's definitely got some clues in it. And um let's see what more. Yeah, okay, so Scarecrow tricks Mikey into he tells him the Father Christian wants protection from one of the gangs, and he tells him to ask him some vague questions that get answers that seem to confirm what the Penguin had told him. So he goes back to his false faces to ask them for protection. He brings them some of their guns, and he ends up getting shot. And they put a little paper that says "traitor" on him. And Huntress and Scarecrow hear the shot, and it's to be continued. We'll see what happens in the next issue. See, is there a lot of? Is there much I missed here? Okay, yeah. So basically, so yeah, this might have been the most entertaining issue to me, just because we got to see Scarecrow's plan starting to take shape, and this is the most interesting the Scarecrow's plan got for me. After this, kind of it was just like, oh, it's not really all that intricate or interesting. He basically just wants them to all kill each other or whatever. But the setup I thought was kind of fun to watch. Um, uh, yeah, the writing and the art were just the same level of quality they were in the last issue. I feel like I'm getting to know these new minor characters decently, even though they're probably not going to be show up at all beyond this story. But um,
Yeah, I thought it was pretty.
it.
I thought it was a good issue, keeping the momentum. I think the part where you didn't mention it. There's a part where a bunch of like conservative Jews show up,
Oh
and
yeah,
Mikey's like, "Yeah, I'll make it an adjoining shelter for you since you don't want to be in the church." I thought that was like slightly weird. I don't know. I don't know how to describe how I feel about that. But ultimately, it shows that Mikey is reforming and uh, is satisfied to be contributing to the society, and in contrast with the Scarecrow. Um, yeah, this was a good issue.
I liked the action sequence of Batman fighting Batman and Batgirl fighting the False Face Society, where Batman just punches a dude through a wall. I thought
Yeah.
that was entertaining.
that
And I
was
want
good.
interesting to note that Batgirl looks a lot different in terms of size. This time, as like last time we saw her, she looked a lot bigger. But now she looks a lot smaller. So just kind of already to see the inconsistencies already kind of placed here. I'm wondering if they already knew Cassie Kane was coming, because she looks a lot more like Cassie Kane here than she does Huntress. Like last time when we first saw her, you could totally tell that was Huntress in there, due to
Yeah,
the height. But this time, like a lot more Cassie Kane looking here in terms of height and size. But I thought that was an interesting point to note. But yeah, I have no other real notes on this issue to add other than you guys had. So we want to continue on to the next one.
Yep. Batman 564 is the next part. The Huntress begs Batman to help Mikey, and it's kind of weird moment where Huntress is like, "Hey, I worked my ass off, trying to be a good member of the Bat family," and Batman's like, "All right, whatever." He doesn't really put up much resistance. It's kind of her just like arguing, expecting that he's going to say no, I guess. And
Yeah.
so Batman carries Mikey walking to I guess, a hospital territory run by Leslie Tompkins.
It
And
would probably be Leslie's. I think probably Leslie's shelter, basically just bigger.
yeah, but it's interesting that, I mean, the no man's land within no man's land. Like, I don't know if gangs are like, I don't know if she has protection. I don't know if gangs are trying to steal her supplies, or if it's just kind of like, hey, it's a big medical facility. She's taking everyone in. Don't fuck with
That's the
her.
just to
And
quickly to compare it to War Games. That's her mentality in War Games with her clinic, is that she won't turn anyone away.
yeah, I mean, like a proper doctor as well. Of course, Gotham's a little crazier, and she has a quick heart to heart with Bruce and reference, because this is, I believe, the first time we're seeing that she's stayed in Gotham. And so Bruce is like, why did you stay? And then it ends up actually being about more, why did you stay in Gotham in general, not specific to the No Man's Land. And her earlier career working with Bruce's father. And you can catch Thomas Wayne currently in Tom King's run. And Crane, Mikey is getting taken care of. Yeah, and I don't remember. We don't come back to Mikey at the very end, right? He doesn't, like, there's no scene of him showing back up to the refuge or anything like that.
No.
So I don't know if we'll ever see him again. I think it'd be kind of cool to check in on him once more in some other arc or something. But back to the main place where everything's going down. Crane seems to have tipped off Gordon as well about the stash under the. To have a chat with the Penguin to figure out all the details. And there's a great moment where he buffs to have like an EMP, which will fuck up Penguin's generators and basically his whole topple his whole empire that he's managed to erect. But it turns out to just be like a stopwatch or alarm clock type of thing, which I thought was a really great, like Batman, like bluffing moment. And Crane leaves to then
the whole issue, whole story.
Yeah. Crane leaves to work and to entice the maskers, reveal and to bring them to try and take the stash, and also reveals the stash to Huntress essentially through like a note. So basically now this issue is setting up the finale where all points are going to converge. Batman is running back to the church. Penguin has his people coming to the church. GCPD has people coming, the maskers are coming, and then the people within the church are there, and certain people involved in the church are starting to discover that they're sitting on top of a bunch of munitions. And yeah, I thought this arc is really more of a Huntress arc. Batman, for the most part, until like he plays a major role, but he's more like the guest star here. But this issue, definitely with that EMP bluff, best Batman moment in here, and best kind of vigilante, like Bat Family, kind of outthinking people moment. I really loved the characterization of Mikey. Like, I honestly was like, as we got into this third issue, which is really the last we see of him, I'm like, this is actually a pretty like interesting character and relatively deep for these 3 issues of this, crossover. Like, he really has made the full turn, and he has the moment with Batman in his arms where he's thinking like, maybe I'm going to bleed out before we get there. Maybe I'm not going to survive once we get there. And he confesses to Batman, he's like, I'm happy that I turned around, and these are the best days of my life, helping people. Pretty damn good writing, considering this character is ultimately just a bit role in this crossover, in this arc, and kind of again underlines the theme of this arc and the contrast with Scarecrow. And then in the end, we really have all the puzzle pieces in place where we're going to have it all connect in the climax.
Right. I mean, I agree with everything you said there in terms of the writing for Devin Grayson there with the Mikey character. But yeah, I like this issue a lot. The EMP, like I said, was probably the standout Batman moment for this issue. But I still like Huntress a lot here too, as she's trying to kind of keep everyone calm as everything's kind of starting to go to hell. Near the end of this issue, and we'll open up in Detective, where kind of a mini gang war kind of starts here. But Michael, anything to add on Batman 564?
No, not really. I agree with all the points you guys have been making. Mikey's a good character so far. Or yeah, just period. I don't think we see him more. Yeah, I'm definitely enjoying the Huntress material. Like, this is the most we've gotten of her all at once in this arc so far, and I'm definitely really liking that character. So, yep.
Actually, I have one more thing because I don't think it's as relevant in the next issue. I talked about how Grayson doesn't like completely land the connection between Scarecrow's obsession with religious imagery and the plot of the arc and the themes and everything. And I think there's actually a pretty similar thing to say about Huntress. So Huntress has crosses on her costume, and
Right.
I never. And again, there's not a ton of solo. Well, Huntress had her own ongoing series, like immediately post Crisis, but never been collected. I've never read it. It's not, to my knowledge, it's not really referenced a ton. And then past that, she didn't have a shitload of solo stories. And so I never really understood, like, to what extent that cross on her costume means anything whatsoever. Like, obviously, there are certain superheroes that are religious. Daredevil, there's tons of religious stuff in Daredevil. And for one, this version of Huntress, Bertinelli, is Italian and she has like mob connections or whatever. So maybe she's just like an Italian with who wears a cross. But in, like, I think it's the first or second issue here, there is actually a very quick reference where the father says that Huntress has come to confession before. And so with that and her costume and everything, behind the scenes in issues that we're not reading, there has to be some kind of religious aspect to the Huntress. And I think we don't really see that delved into at all. I mean, most of it is because Scarecrow, all of his religious stuff is really just narration. Towards the very end, he starts like going crazy, like shouting preacher style. But otherwise, it's all in his head. And if more of it was out, maybe Huntress would be bouncing off of it and Father would be bouncing off of it more and everything like that. But there's no real connection made between Huntress and any of the religious and iconography, and the fact that this all takes place in a church with, preachers and everything like that.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that confession line earlier, but I forgot to. I'm pretty sure I have read that Helena Bertinelli is a canonically Catholic superhero. Like, I think it does come up in some of her stories. Like, it's probably not as big or as delved into as Daredevil or Nightcrawler or someone, but I think that is why she has crosses on her costume. And there was the reference to she's been to confession before. So yeah, that's not delved into a lot here, but it's kind of there in the background, I suppose. And yeah, that's something we can look more into later, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, but if you were, and I think she definitely is Catholic. I mean, she's a mob-connected Italian. But like, if you were gonna, delve into that anywhere, this would be the arc to do it.
Yeah.
And
Need a missed opportunity.
yeah, and not to denigrate the arc overall, as we've all been positive on it, but there are just options where they could have gone further.
I will counter with, I think if you were to add that element in here, it might be a little bit too crowded for it.
Yeah, perhaps.
Because if you were to add that, then I feel like with the addition of like kind of the gang war that happens in these last two parts, you have a lot of things going on at once.
Yeah.
But those are all our thoughts. We're going to close out with Detective Comics number 731. This is probably my favorite cover of Huntress kind of fighting a bunch of guys all at once, and then you got Father Chris in the right corner trying to protect people, and then Gordon's giving a right hook to someone in the left corner. I kind of think it captures the chaos of what's going on pretty well. The stained glass window is Scarecrow, and you see Batman's shadow on kind of the upper right hand corner. This was my favorite cover of the bunch. Like I said, I thought it captured the chaos pretty well. But we open kind of right as the last one stopped, as we have a full out kind of gang war happening as the false facers are now they're primed and ready with their guns locked on the people of the refugee center. Father Chris is caught in the middle. We already have people that have gotten hit in guns, and then we got the Penguins guys coming in, and then the Blue Boys with the GCPD are coming in. While meanwhile, Batman's trying to figure out his best way to get involved here. As Huntress is kind of having it out with Scarecrow, trying to calm everyone down and show that Scarecrow is manipulating everyone. Interesting to note, where I'll get to it, but this is the first time that Gordon sees Batman properly in this. But one of the false facers gets hit, and somewhere along the lines, Batman snuck and disguised himself because the guy that we think gets killed kind of wanders back to Huntress, and then we realize that one of the guys that was killed was actually Batman. He pops out in the middle. He takes out the Penguins men, sending the full message to the Penguins, telling them, "Hey, this is now under my protection, whether they like it or not. So Penguin will no longer be dealing in this area of the city." And that's where Gordon sees Batman. He's kind of like throwing gas grenades for like crowd dispersion. And he actually kind of yells at Batman to hold it right there, but we don't see them meet again here. So we set that kind of nest egg there, as we know Gordon doesn't like Batman right now. The rest of the issue is kind of Huntress convinces everyone to see that they've been manipulated, and their fear was pried on by Scarecrow, and that we still need to hope, and we need faith and compassion, as the rest of the people kind of in multiple languages and religions they all kind of surround Scarecrow, and they wish him protection and peace, which freaks Scarecrow out and he runs away. And then Father Chris takes all the weapons they had, they throw them over the bridge. As Penguin kind of writes it off that, okay, Penguin lost. The Scarecrow is in a back alley burning his costume, as he's complete. So I'm kind of facing that there is no Scarecrow in No Man's Land now, because there's nothing left for him to make anyone afraid, as he failed here. And then we end this with Batman revealing the new Batgirl to his Batcave, which is revealed to be underneath Arkham Asylum. This is one of many Batcaves we will see. But yep, that's the story. It's kind of a big chaotic fight. As Huntress kind of rights the ship. I liked the ending to this a lot. I thought there was kind of high energy to all the fighting. I liked all of the different factions converging on one another. I thought Grayson laid that out really well, and then Eagleson, thought kept the action moving and ramping up as well as it did. I think though the ending with Batgirl is really, really tacked on and kind of comes out of nowhere. I thought the ending really should have been just Scarecrow burning the costume, and we could have called it a day there. But I'll open it to you guys for final thoughts.
Yeah, pretty much the same. We were talking about how, adding more religious elements might overstuff it. And the one thing, as far as adding and subtracting, I feel like you could mostly take out the GCPD's involvement in this story and it wouldn't change a single thing.
I can see that.
I mean, there's like in like what is it? I think it was like the second issue. There's like a half decent quick scene with Gordon and Essen, but it's like didn't really have a shitload to do with this issue. And I don't think the church refusing to be under the territory of the GCPD was like critical to the plot. And you could have made that same kind of idea with Huntress and Batman. And then there's just the awkward moment where Gordon like sees Batman and then gets gassed and is just like, well, we're just going to walk away. Even though there's like still a gang fight in front of them. I mean, he's safe to presume that both well, but still, they just kind of like bail.
Yeah. Michael, final thoughts on the arc as a whole?
Good arc. I mentioned some lightning picks earlier, like Scarecrow's plan getting less interesting as it went along, but I enjoyed this arc. It was definitely a solid addition in this ongoing status quo we're reviewing. Yeah, good stuff.
I think I enjoy the arc as a whole. I just feel like I think it's cool seeing Huntress more in the star spot, but then we have that inner battle of Batman's really not in it, and this flows through the main Batman book. But that's kind of the way the stories are going to be set up as one writer through multiple books, kind of, and that's what you're going to get here. Um, I just really felt that Batgirl segment was tacked on near the end there. Um,
Yeah.
it really could have been the opener to another issue, to like the next arc, instead of just being kind of like thoughtlessly tacked on here. At least for me, because we really didn't see Batgirl that much at all in the arc. She showed up only once before this. This was really Huntress's place. If this would have worked a lot better if it was Huntress and not Batgirl. Um, but I do like the setup for Penguin as I think it's kind of setting up that Batman's probably going to look at going after Penguin and Black Mask next, as we've seen them as the next kind of villains with territory on the line. It is the Blue Boys and Batman move through no man's land.
And that is exactly what we will be covering next episode. We will actually be covering two arcs just to form them together because they're both two issues. One is Penguin and one is Black Mask. And also on the Black Mask note, and just one final comment on this arc, I feel like the whole setup for the False Face Society or whatever was not very clear. Like, why the hell did these guys abandon Black Mask? I kind of felt like maybe we missed some Black Mask arc, but we definitely didn't,
Right.
within No Man's Land at least. And it would be weird if, there was a Black Mask arc which caused this status quo, then No Man's Land happened, and all these guys just like are still separate from him. I don't know. I feel like there was just a slight bit of like exposition missing there, but we will see what Black Mask is up to. I assume he also has some goons that stuck with him as well. We'll see what he's up to. And I believe Black Mask arc will be, who wrote No Law and New Order was Bob Gale. So I think this Black Mask arc might be the first extended stuff by Greg Rucka.
Okay. Interesting.
Um, so tune in next watching this one and get home safe.